I didn't lose everything that night. I found out who was never really with me to begin with. My name is Nicholas Hart, and I'm 43 years old. For 18 years, I was the COO of a thriving logistics firm in Chicago. I helped take the company from a 6-person startup in a cramped office space to a multi-state operation with over 200 employees and revenue in the 9 figures. I wasn't just an executive, I was the one who kept it all together. While the CEO, Grant Melrose, made flashy speeches and held investor dinners, I was the one making sure trucks showed up, contracts cleared, and crises were quietly handled before they hit anyone's inbox. Grant and I had been best friends since college, or at least I thought we were. We built the company together late nights, cheap coffee, missed holidays. Our wives became friends, our kids had birthdays together. It wasn't just a partnership, it felt like family. Until last year. It started subtle. Meetings I wasn't invited to, financial reports I had to request twice, people whispering in hallways and going quiet when I walked in. And Grant, well, he was suddenly too busy for our usual Friday lunches, the ones we hadn't missed in a decade. I told myself I was being paranoid. I wasn't. One Thursday morning, I walked into my office to find HR waiting for me in a folder on my desk. Inside, termination papers. Performance misalignment, they called it. No prior warning, no discussion, no real explanation. Grant didn't even show up. I was escorted out by security like a thief. The same man I'd built everything with didn't even have the spine to look me in the eye. I remember standing on the curb outside the building, holding a cardboard box of my things, a framed photo of my daughter, an old leather notebook, the mug she gave me when she was 10 that said, "World's Best Boss." It was raining. Of course it was. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part came 2 weeks later when the story broke. The firm had been acquired quietly. Grant sold majority stake to a private equity group based in Boston, a deal worth over $200 million. And I wasn't listed anywhere in the filings, not as a partner, not as a shareholder, not as anything. I was erased. Years of sweat, sacrifice, weekends, and lost time with my daughter gone. But the kicker? A week after the news dropped, I got a call. From a blocked number. The voice on the other end was shaky. It was Maria, a former accountant from our finance department. She was one of the good ones, quiet, detail-oriented, loyal. She had worked under me for years. "I'm sorry to call you like this," she whispered, "but there's something you need to know." That's when she told me about the audits, the forged expense reports, the quiet payouts, the shell companies, the documents that had my signature, but I had never signed them. They'd framed me. Months before they pushed me out, Grant and his new investor buddies had started preparing the acquisition. But they needed a fall guy for the financial red flags, so they made one. Me. They altered reports, attached my name to irregular transaction, and kept it all quiet until they had the deal locked in. Then they fired me. Clean break. No questions. If the feds ever came knocking, it wouldn't be on them. It would be on me. I didn't speak for days after that call. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I just sat in my apartment staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out how you spend almost 2 decades building something, only to realize the people you trusted most were the ones putting the knife in your back. I thought about lawyers. But how do you fight people who can afford to bury you in court filings? I thought about revenge. But what does that even mean when you've already lost your name? And then I thought about my daughter. She was 15, smart, sharp. She looked at the world like it was full of color and possibility. I'd raised her to believe in hard work, in loyalty, in doing the right thing, even when no one was watching. What would she think if her father just disappeared? So I got up. I printed every email Maria had sent me. I made copies of the reports. I called in a few favors. People I'd helped over the years, suppliers, clients, even a couple folks from the legal department who hadn't jumped ship yet. And slowly I started piecing together the truth. Not just for me, but for everyone Grant had stepped on. And there were a lot more than I realized. The deeper I dug, the darker it got. Kickbacks, bribery, fake vendors. It wasn't just me. They'd been bleeding the company dry for over a year, all under the radar. And the worst part? They were planning to do it again to another firm. Another acquisition. Another clean sweep. Another man like me standing on a sidewalk with a box of memories and no explanation. I wasn't going to let that happen. What? I didn't have the money for lawyers. But I had time. I had nothing to lose. And I had truth. It wasn't enough yet, but it was a start. I wasn't after headlines. I wasn't after glory. I wanted one thing and one thing only. Justice. But justice doesn't come easy. Not when the enemy has power, money, and no conscience. Still, they underestimated the man they threw away. And that was their first mistake. It's funny how silence can be louder than words. After the trial, the world around me moved on. Headlines faded, the firm shifted hands. Ethan's name became a whisper, a cautionary tale in boardrooms. But for me, the echoes stayed. Quiet moments were the loudest when I lay awake at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, wondering how everything unraveled so fast, and whether I'd ever truly move on from it. People assumed I'd be celebrating, but there's no joy in winning a war you never asked to fight. One afternoon, about 2 weeks after the verdict, I received a letter in the mail. Handwritten, no return address. It simply read, "You think it's over? You've only just started something you don't understand." No signature, no clue. At first I thought it was some bitter ex-employee, a leftover grudge from Ethan's circle. But the handwriting, it felt familiar, precise, almost feminine. I tossed it aside, tried not to think about it. But I couldn't shake the feeling. That evening I called Lena. "You ever get weird mail?" I asked, pacing my living room. She paused. "You mean like stalker weird or threatening weird?" "Threatening, cryptic. Someone trying to play Godfather." Silence. "I got something too," she said. "Different wording, same energy." "What did it say?" "Truth has a price and you're overdue." My stomach turned. "I think someone's still out there," she added. "Someone who was close to him. Or used to be." That was all it took. The idea I hadn't burned the whole web. That somewhere, someone still had matches. The next morning, I walked into the remnants of what was once my office. I hadn't been back since the trial. The new management gave me full clearance. Said I could take what I needed, close the chapter. Dust covered everything. The framed photo of our team, the one we took after landing the Walker account, was still hanging, crooked, faded. I stared at it for a long moment. At Ethan's grin. At Vanessa's cautious smile. At myself, younger, sharper, more naive. I opened the drawers, files, old notes, business cards. And then, a folder I didn't recognize. It was tucked between two binders, marked only with my initials. Inside were photocopies, internal memos, HR reports, whispers of something Ethan had hidden from even his closest allies. Off-the-books deals, foreign transfers, a name I didn't recognize kept showing up. S.V. Nash. I took photos, scanned everything, then left. Back home, I dove into research. It took hours. Nights blurred into mornings. And then I found it. Sylvia Von Nash, former head of strategic partnerships, left the firm 5 years ago under unusual circumstances. No one had heard from her since. But her name appeared on 2 of Ethan's personal wires. And in one memo, he'd signed off a fund transfer with, handled, SVN approved. I sat back. There were layers to Ethan I hadn't even uncovered in court. I called Lena again. "Did you ever hear of a Sylvia Nash?" Clicking, typing, then a pause. "She was a genius. One of the youngest VPs ever hired, left without explanation. Rumor was Ethan forced her out. Why? No one knows. She had dirt on him, maybe. Some people say they were involved. Others say she threatened to go to the board. My heart beat faster. What if she didn't just leave, I said. What if she's still out there watching? Lena didn't answer, but I could feel it in her silence. She was thinking the same thing. And that weekend, I drove to the address I found listed under Sylvia's name in old real estate records. It was 2 hours outside the city, a quiet cabin on a lake. The kind of place you disappear into. I didn't even know what I'd say if she opened the door. But when I arrived, it wasn't locked. In fact, the front door was slightly ajar. I knocked. Nothing. Hello? I called out, stepping in. The place was dusty but lived in. Books stacked along the walls, a laptop left open on a table, a coffee mug with a fresh stain. She'd been here, maybe just hours ago. Then I saw the photo. It was Ethan, younger, standing with a woman's sharp eyes, auburn hair pulled back tight. She had her hand on his chest like a warning more than affection. Sylvia. Suddenly, I wasn't just trespassing. I was walking through a ghost's house. A floorboard creaked behind me. You've got guts. I turned slowly and she stood there, a pistol loosely in her hand. Not raised, but not exactly lowered either. I was hoping you'd find me, she added. My mouth was dry. You know who I am? She smirked. Everyone knows who you are now. I raised my hand slightly. I'm not here to fight. I found your name in his files. I think he feared you. She stared at me a moment too long, then finally set the gun down on a nearby shelf. You should sit, she said. There's more you don't know. I did. She poured whiskey into 2 glasses. No ice, no ceremony. I knew Ethan before he was Ethan, she began. We built the first portfolio together. I was the mind. He was the mouth. For a while, it worked. Until I saw who he really was. She slid a file toward me. He used you because you reminded him of who he pretended to be. Honest, focused, dangerous in the way he couldn't control. I opened the file. It was a list. Names, dates, amounts, and next to each, collateral. What is this? People he ruined, quietly, bought out, set up. Some ended up in prison, others vanished. My head spun. He was building something darker, she said. Not just fraud, power. He wanted leverage in every industry. And you didn't stop him. I tried. He made sure I'd vanish too. I had to fake illness, disappear. But I kept records, in case he ever tried to rebuild. I met her gaze. He's in prison now. He can't hurt you. She laughed bitterly. You think a cage stops a man like that? I stared at the file again. Ethan had enemies, powerful ones. And if even half of this was true, his downfall had barely begun. Why me? I asked. Why show me this? Because you already started the fire, and now they'll come to you. Who? She stood, walked to the window. The ones who backed him, who covered for him. They lost a pawn when you exposed him. Now they need a new scapegoat. I felt a chill crawl down my spine. I stood slowly. So, what do I do? She looked back at me. Decide what kind of man you want to be when the next door opens? She didn't walk me out. Didn't need to. Back in my car, I placed the file on the passenger seat. It felt heavier than it should, like it carried weight beyond paper. When I got home, there was another letter waiting. No stamp, just left at my door. Inside, one sentence. You've scratched the surface, ready to bleed? I didn't sleep that night, but I knew one thing. This wasn't over. It had only just begun. I didn't sleep much that night. Even after everything, the boardroom blowout, the resignation threats, the quiet apologies behind closed doors, my mind wouldn't stop spinning. I kept playing it over in my head. What Ethan had done to me, to the company, to Vanessa. It was like living inside a broken clock, where time ticked but nothing moved forward. The next morning, I got a call from Lena. You're going to want to see this, she said, voice low and clipped. What happened? Just come to the office, now. By the time I arrived, the place was buzzing. Whispers around every cubicle, eyes darting, fingers tapping nervously against keyboards. Lena met me at the elevator, pulled me straight into a private conference room, and shut the door. He's gone, she said. What? Ethan. He cleaned out his desk, took his laptop, personal drives, and bolted. It says he disabled remote access to his machine. The backup servers are missing logs from last night. Some files were purged. I stared at her, stunned. You're telling me he ran? Lena's face was pale. He knew what was coming. Vanessa's email, my file trail, your reinstatement. He saw the noose tightening and decided to disappear. But legally, he can't just vanish. He did. HR's trying to spin it like a sudden leave of absence. But I overheard someone from accounting say there was a massive wire transfer at 3 a.m. outbound, unauthorized. I clenched my jaw. How much? 3 million. Silence. Then I turned, grabbed the phone, and called compliance. The next 48 hours were chaos. Auditors came in, the board demanded answers. Everyone looked to me, the guy who Ethan had nearly destroyed, for clarity. I gave them what I had, the documents, the inconsistencies, Lena's logs, Vanessa's emails. But none of it was enough to fix the damage. 3 million gone, reputations shattered, lawsuits looming. And Ethan? Nowhere. The firm appointed me as interim managing partner, which was ironic considering I'd spent the past year being told I was obsolete. Now I was their best chance at survival. I didn't celebrate. I got to work. Day after day, I sifted through years of mess Ethan left behind. Shady deals, under-the-table commissions, hush payments, even falsified financial reports to investors. He hadn't just wanted to push me out. He'd hollowed the place from the inside. By the end of the week, I had a case file thicker than my arm. And still no sign of him. Then Vanessa called. I might have something, she said, voice shaking. She was in hiding at her sister's place 3 states away, but she'd been tracking Ethan, or at least trying to. Credit cards, club memberships, old habits die hard, and Ethan had always loved his luxury. There's a charge in Zurich, she told me. A penthouse suite. I know he has a contact there, a guy who launders crypto through shell charities. Can you get proof? I can try, but if he knows I'm helping you, he won't, I promise. No one will. 2 days later, a burner phone buzzed on my desk. Photos, Ethan in Zurich, sitting in a rooftop bar, grinning like nothing had happened. And next to him, a woman I didn't recognize. Until I zoomed in. It was Vanessa. Another photo. This one older, same woman, different name. My stomach dropped. Vanessa had lied. She wasn't just a victim. She'd been in on it. Maybe not from the beginning, but somewhere along the way, she chose a side, and it wasn't mine. I stared at the screen, trying to reconcile the version of her I'd seen on that witness stand with the one now sipping champagne across from the man who stole everything. Lena knocked on the door. You okay? I turned the phone toward her. She swore under her breath. You think she played both sides? I nodded. I think she fed me just enough truth to win trust, then disappeared with him. She's risking a lot, Lena said. She thinks Ethan will protect her. Lena scoffed. He doesn't protect anyone but himself. I stood slowly. My heart wasn't racing. It wasn't even breaking. It was quiet, cold, resolved. I'm going to bring them both down, I said. Legally, completely. Lena's eyes narrowed. What do you need me to do? Help me find everything they missed. Every penny. Every fake invoice. Every off-record transfer. We trace the money. We expose the system. And then we make a call to the feds. She nodded once. Let's burn it down. The next 3 weeks were war. We uncovered a spiderweb of shell accounts, money funneled through ghost vendors, split into crypto, moved across international waters, and hidden in offshore trusts. Ethan had built an empire on deception, and Vanessa had been his voice on the inside. But they weren't careful. They used names that tied back to old aliases. They left timestamps that didn't match. One email found deep in a corrupt server showed Vanessa setting up a meeting with EK under a fake client name just days before she testified. We had them. I filed everything with the SEC and the FBI. Lena delivered the final documents by hand. And then we waited. Days passed. Then an arrest warrant was issued for Ethan First. Interpol flagged his passport. Within 48 hours, he was detained in Milan while trying to board a private jet. Vanessa's name came next and she ran. But this time, she ran alone. Ethan cut her loose. Of course he did. When they brought him back, I wasn't allowed at the airport, but I saw the news clips. Hood over his head, cuffs on his wrists, rage in his eyes. The man who thought he was invincible, now caged. And Vanessa? Still missing, but not for long. She made a mistake always does. Tried to use a card registered under her cousin's name in Amsterdam. Caught. Deported. Now, both of them awaited trial. The firm? We survived. Barely. Some clients left, others stayed out of loyalty or pity or hope. But I didn't care about the numbers anymore. I cared about the people, the culture, the truth. One late night, Lena and I stood in the empty office looking over the skyline. You could walk away, she said quietly. After all this, start fresh. I shook my head. I don't run, she smiled. Neither do I. I turned back toward the window. Ethan's reflection lingered in the glass, a ghost, finally banished. They thought they could destroy me, I said, but all they did was give me a reason to rebuild. I was never one for superstition, but something about that Tuesday morning felt heavier. Maybe it was the quiet hum of the city that didn't quite match the rhythm I'd gotten used to. Or maybe it was the fact that for the first time in years, I was walking into a building that once represented everything I'd lost and everything I was about to take back. The office lobby looked the same. Polished floors. The scent of too expensive cologne and burnt espresso beans. But the energy? It was off. People moved with urgency, but not purpose. No one smiled. No one made eye contact. It was a machine running on fumes. And I was ready to pull the plug. I had spent the last 2 weeks assembling my next move, quietly, deliberately, with just enough whispers placed in the right ears to remind the company that I wasn't gone, I was just waiting. Waiting for the right fracture. It came in the form of numbers. Bad ones. The quarterly earnings were down. Way down. The investors weren't happy, and the internal memo I managed to get a copy of, courtesy of an old IT friend, confirmed the board was spooked. They were looking for someone to blame. Perfect. I didn't walk straight into the boardroom. That would have been too easy and too loud. Instead, I went to HR. I knew Elaine still worked there. Middle-aged, sharp as a tack, and with a memory like a vault. She blinked twice when she saw me. Mark? She whispered, half standing. In the flesh, I smiled. I know I'm probably not supposed to be here, but I think it's time someone told the truth. And I figured it should start with someone who still remembers what this place used to stand for. She stared at me for a moment, then nodded slowly. Conference room C, 10 minutes. Let me see what I can do. I watched her disappear down the corridor and let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. 10 minutes turned into 30. I paced the hallway, hands buried in my coat pockets, heart thudding. Finally, she came back not alone. Behind her stood Mr. Gallard, one of the junior board advisors. He was younger than I remembered, taller maybe, but his eyes were sharp, calculating. You have 5 minutes, he said flatly. I walked into the room, placed the file folder I'd brought down on the table, and opened it. Inside, proof of inflated numbers, redacted financial reports, bonuses funneled through shell vendors. It was Ethan's paper trail, the same one he thought he'd buried. And I was digging it up line by line. When I finished, Gallard sat back slowly, lips tight. Why now? He asked. Because I gave everything to this company, I said, and it gave me silence in return. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because I know what this place was supposed to be, and I'm not letting it die like this. He didn't say anything, but he took the file. Later that evening, I got a call from a blocked number. Come in tomorrow, 9 a.m. boardroom. Don't be late. The boardroom hadn't changed. Long mahogany table, 12 high-backed chairs, and now 11 pairs of eyes watching me like I was both a ghost and a threat. Ethan wasn't there, but his shadow was. I was asked to speak and I did, calmly, directly, no theatrics, just facts about the money, the manipulation, the people pushed out for asking too many questions. I expected resistance. What I got was silence. Then one voice spoke up. Mr. Klein, one of the original partners. Gray suit, grayer soul. I remember you, he said. You were the one who stayed late, fixed the Smythe account. I nodded once. And the one Ethan buried when I got too close to the truth. He looked down. We all suspected something, but no one wanted to be the one to light the match, I finished for him. He didn't argue. Another voice, Gallard, spoke next. The evidence is solid. If what you're saying is true, there needs to be a motion, a vote. I was asked to leave the room. For 10 minutes, I waited outside, heartbeat in my throat. Then the door opened. You're reinstated, Gallard said. Temporary oversight role. We'll review performance and make it permanent within the quarter. I should have felt elated. Instead, I felt tired. This wasn't a victory. It was a return. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Meetings, assessments, cleaning up the wreckage Ethan had left behind. I found out Vanessa had fled the country, no forwarding address, just a text that said, I'm sorry. It was enough. Lena stayed, though, became my second-in-command, sharp, loyal, and way too good for the office politics. She helped me track down misused accounts, rehire people who were unjustly pushed out, and most importantly, rebuild trust. One afternoon, I walked past the conference room and saw her talking with Mr. Klein. Her posture was stiff, defensive. I stepped closer. I just don't think bringing Ethan back into the conversation makes any sense, she was saying. My blood froze. Klein raised his hand. All I said was that we should understand what his vision was, not bring him back. Lena didn't buy it, neither did I. Later that night, I called Gallard. I need to know if there's any movement towards letting Ethan return in any capacity. He didn't answer right away. Then, there's talk. Nothing official. Something with his connections. I hung up. 2 days later, I found the document. Buried under a new shell corporation name. Signed not by Ethan, but by a proxy I recognized from his old company. It was subtle, clean, designed to look like a third-party acquisition offer. But it wasn't. It was Ethan, trying to sneak back in through the side door. I stormed into Gallard's office. Threw the document on his desk. You knew. I suspected, he said too calmly, but there was no proof until now. You're still protecting him. No, he said, standing. I'm protecting the company, and right now it needs stability more than it needs justice. That was it. I walked out. Straight to Klein's office. Same confrontation. Same excuses. They didn't want justice. They wanted comfort. So I gave them neither. I leaked the story. Anonymously, every document, every file, to a reporter I trusted, one who had been sniffing around Ethan for years. Within 48 hours, the company was on fire. Not literally, but close. Media frenzy. Stakeholder panic. Investigations reopened, and this time, the board couldn't bury it. They tried to frame me again, said I broke protocol, violated internal policy, but it was too late. The truth was out. I was removed from my position again. But this time, I smiled. Because Ethan, he was done. Klein, disgraced. Gallard, under review. And me, I walked away. For good. 6 months later, I sat in a quiet park. Lena joined me, 2 coffees in hand. They issued the final ruling last week, she said. The company's being restructured. New leadership. Ethan's name is blacklisted. I nodded. You could have stayed. They offered you a role in the new structure. I know. You don't want it? I looked at her. I've rebuilt my name once. I don't need to do it again. She smiled softly. We sat in silence for a while. Then she handed me a folder. What's this? A proposal, new firm, you, me, clean slate, No politics, just purpose. I opened it. Read the first page. And I smiled. Let's build something that can't be taken, she said. I nodded. This time, not from pain, but from hope. I couldn't sleep. It was past 3 a.m., and the city outside my window was finally quiet, but my mind was louder than ever. I kept going back to that last conversation with Jenna's father, the way he hesitated, the way he avoided eye contact when I asked about the sudden sail-off, about why his name was all over documents that should have been mine to review. Something wasn't right. I sat up, grabbed my laptop, and opened the encrypted folder I hadn't touched in over a year. I still had access to old reports, contract drafts, and digital correspondence. Not much, just remnants. Maybe enough. An hour later, I found it. A non-disclosure agreement, backdated and signed electronically by me. Except I never signed that. I remembered what I'd signed that week, and this wasn't it. The document effectively waived my rights to contest the ownership transfer of the firm's Westbrook subsidiary, the same branch that had made the record-breaking deal right before I was pushed out. They forged it. Or someone did it for them. I ran it through the metadata tool Lena had shown me back when she was still working in compliance. Timestamp mismatch, IP address anomaly. Whoever forged it wasn't very careful. I saved everything, encrypted the folder, and forwarded it to a contact I hadn't spoken to in months. Julian Rivers, a cybersecurity expert and one of the few people who still owed me a favor. I messaged, "Need your eyes on something big, quietly, urgent." He replied within minutes, "Send it, already booting up." By morning, I had confirmation the document was fabricated, and not just forged, clumsily edited from a template Julian had written himself years ago. He recognized his own code patterns. That was my proof. But I needed more than a smoking gun. I needed leverage. Later that week, I requested a casual meeting with Gregory Talbot Jenna's father. The man had always been unreadable. Firm handshake, hollow smile, and eyes that calculated every word before it left his mouth. We met in a discreet restaurant, one of those upscale places where conversations stayed private because the bills made sure of it. He was already seated when I arrived, cufflinks gleaming, face composed. "You've been busy," he said as I sat. "You've been sloppy," I replied. "Your IT guy left fingerprints all over a fake NDA." There was a beat, no change in expression, then a slight tilt of his head. "I assume you didn't come here to threaten me." "No," I said calmly. "I came here to let you fix this before I go public." He gave a small, humorless smile. "And what exactly do you want?" I leaned forward, voice low. "I want my name cleared. I want the internal investigation reopened. I want the board to see the original ownership agreement. And I want full reinstatement of my voting shares before the next quarter." "That's a tall order. Then you better get climbing," I said, "because if I go down, I'm not going alone." He studied me for a long moment. Then, for the first time in months, I saw something flicker behind his eyes. Respect? Maybe. Fear? Hopefully. He picked up his phone. "You'll have an answer in 72 hours. The next day, I received an anonymous email. No sender, just a subject line. "You were never supposed to see this." Inside was a video file. I hesitated before opening it. When I finally clicked play, my breath caught. It was from an internal security cam hidden, grainy footage from a conference room. The same conference room where I'd supposedly confessed to negligence in a deal that cost the firm millions. The same meeting that led to my termination? But the footage told a different story. There was no confession. There was me calmly laying out risks, pointing to flaws in the Westbrook deal, warning them it was premature. Then there was Jenna. Her voice sharp, dismissive. Then she said the words, "I never forgot. If he doesn't get behind this, we'll remove him, one way or another." Gregory nodded. And then the feed cut out. It wasn't just betrayal. It was a setup, one orchestrated months in advance. I felt the floor shift beneath me. This wasn't just business. This was personal. Jenna didn't just walk away from me, she planned to bury me. And her father helped. I knew then, this couldn't be fixed quietly. I called Julian. I need that video authenticated and time-stamped. You planning to go scorched earth? No, I'm planning to go home with everything they tried to steal from me. The next 72 hours were a blur. I called in every favor, reached out to former board members who still respected my name. One of them, Elaine Kessler, agreed to meet. She had left the firm a month after I was terminated, called it a moral disagreement. When I showed her the video, she turned pale. They made us believe you broke protocol, she whispered. They showed us edited transcripts, but this changes everything. I nodded. Will you back me? I'll call the others, she said, but you'll need to show this to the press. I will, after the board meeting. We shook hands, KO. That Friday, I walked into the conference room like a man reborn. Same suits, same cold faces, same seats. Except this time, I wasn't alone. Elaine sat beside me, and behind me a silent observer from the regulatory body, brought in by legal request. Jenna's face when I played the footage? Panic. Gregory's? Stone. When the video ended, I didn't say a word. I just watched the board. Watched their expressions shift from confusion to fury to shame. Then I placed the original ownership contract on the table. My name. My rights. Restored. Gregory tried to speak, so did Jenna. But the room was done listening. A vote was called. Unanimous. My position reinstated. Their contracts reviewed. Sanctions recommended. Jenna stood up, furious. You think this fixes anything? You think you've won? I looked her in the eye, calm, final. No, I think I survived. Then I walked out. Unanimous. My position reinstated. Their contracts reviewed. Sanctions recommended. Jenna stood up, furious. You think this fixes anything? You think you've won? I looked her in the eye, calm, final. No, I think I survived. Then I walked out.